Lisa Chen had been living in Meadowbrook Gardens for 3 years, and honestly, it had been pretty great. Her house was nothing fancy, just a regular 2-story place painted light blue with cream-colored shutters. She worked as a legal assistant at a law firm downtown, and every evening she'd come home to her quiet street, make dinner for herself and her daughter Mia, and just enjoy the peace. The neighborhood was one of those planned communities with an HOA, which meant there were rules about what you could and couldn't do with your property. Keep your grass under 3 inches. No boats or RVs parked in the driveway. Paint colors had to be approved. Lisa didn't mind any of it. She wasn't the type to cause trouble, and most of the rules just made sense anyway. Life was going along just fine until last spring when the house directly across the street finally sold. It had been empty for months, and Lisa was curious about who would move in. She got her answer on a Saturday morning when the moving truck showed up, along with a woman who looked to be in her late 50s, directing the movers with the intensity of a military general. That was how Lisa met Patricia Brennan. Within the first week, Patricia had already made quite an impression on the neighborhood. She knocked on every door to introduce herself, which was nice enough, but she also used those visits to point out things she'd noticed. Mrs. Johnson's garden gnomes were a bit. First, the Martinez family's basketball hoop was positioned incorrectly. Young Danny Brooks down the street had left his skateboard on the front lawn, which Patricia felt was bringing down the whole block's appearance. Most neighbors smiled politely and closed their doors, but Patricia was just getting started. She started attending HOA meetings immediately, showing up with a leather folder full of notes and photographs. The HOA president, a retired teacher named George Palmer, tried to be patient with her, but you could see him getting tired of her constant complaints. Now, here's the thing about Lisa's house that becomes important. On her front door, her garage door, and 2 of her ground floor windows, there were these bright orange and white reflective stickers. They weren't small either. Each one was about the size of your hand, with reflective strips that would catch any light at night. They definitely stood out against her light blue house, but these weren't decorations. They weren't something Lisa had chosen. They were required by a court order, and she didn't have any choice about having them there. See, Lisa was divorced. Her ex-husband, Robert, had some problems with drinking that had gotten worse after their marriage ended. There'd been a couple of incidents during his time with Mia. Nothing that hurt her physically, thank goodness, but enough to scare Lisa badly. She'd gone to court, and the judge had modified their custody arrangement. Robert could still see Mia, but only with supervision, and only during specific times. The judge had also ordered something else. Those orange stickers. They were special markers that emergency services could spot immediately if they ever needed to respond to Lisa's address quickly. It was a safety measure, something to make sure that if anything ever went wrong during one of Robert's visits, help could find the house without any delay. The judge had been very specific. The stickers had to stay up. They had to be visible. They had to be maintained. It was part of the official custody order. Lisa had the paperwork to prove it, filed away carefully in a folder in her home office. She'd never had to show it to anyone before. Nobody had ever questioned the stickers until Patricia moved in. It started with a knock on the door about 2 weeks after Patricia had settled into her new place. Lisa opened it to find her new neighbor standing there with a pleasant smile, holding a plate of cookies. "Hello, dear," Patricia said. "I wanted to properly introduce myself. I'm Patricia from across the street." They chatted for a few minutes. Patricia complimented Lisa's garden, asked about Mia, seemed friendly enough. Then, just as she was about to leave, she paused. "I did want to mention something, just neighbor to neighbor," Patricia said, her voice taking on a different tone. "Those orange stickers on your door and windows. They're quite noticeable. I'm sure you put them up for some reason, but they really don't fit with the neighborhood aesthetic. The HOA has standards about exterior decorations, and I think those would qualify. You might want to take them down before someone files a formal complaint." Lisa felt her stomach drop. She'd been dreading this conversation, though she'd hoped it would never happen. "Actually," Lisa said carefully, "those aren't decorations. They're required by a court order. I legally have to keep them there." She explained the situation as briefly as she could, not going into too much detail about Robert's issues, but making it clear that this wasn't optional. These were safety markers mandated by a family court judge. Patricia's expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked almost like disappointment. "Oh," she said. "Well, I suppose if it's court-ordered. Though I do think you should check with the HOA. I'm not sure any court can override community covenants." Lisa assured her that her lawyer had already confirmed everything was legal and proper. Patricia left with a tight smile, taking her cookies with her. For a few days, Lisa thought that was the end of it. Patricia seemed to have accepted the explanation. But then Lisa started hearing things from other neighbors. Mrs. Johnson mentioned that Patricia had been asking about the stickers. The Martinez family said Patricia had brought them up during a conversation about the HOA rules. Young Danny's mom texted Lisa to warn her that Patricia had been saying the stickers were a problem that needed addressing. Then came the HOA meeting. Lisa didn't usually attend these things, but George Palmer called her up one evening. "Lisa, I wanted to give you a heads up," he said. "Patricia Brennan has put the topic of your safety stickers on next month's meeting agenda. She's calling them unauthorized exterior decorations. I know you've got that court order, and that's going to be my response to her. But I thought you should know this is coming." Lisa thanked him and hung up, feeling a knot of anxiety forming in her chest. She'd done nothing wrong. She was following a judge's orders. But somehow she was being made to feel like she was the problem. The meeting was exactly as uncomfortable as Lisa had feared. Patricia presented her case with charts and photographs, arguing that the stickers violated Section 7.3 of the Community Covenants regarding exterior modifications. She had documentation about property values. She'd even brought examples of more aesthetically pleasing emergency markers that she claimed would work just as well. Lisa stood up and presented her court order. She explained again about the custody situation, about why these specific stickers were required. George ruled in Lisa's favor immediately, stating clearly that legal mandates superseded HOA guidelines. But as Lisa left that meeting, she could feel Patricia's eyes on her back, and she had a sinking feeling that this was far from over. After the HOA meeting, Lisa hoped things would settle down. George had made his ruling clear, and that should have been the end of it. But Patricia Brennan wasn't the type to let things go. The very next week, Lisa came home from work to find a letter in her mailbox. Not just any letter, but an official-looking document on HOA letterhead. Her heart sank as she opened it. It was a community standards inquiry, asking her to provide documentation justifying her exterior modifications within 14 days. Lisa called George immediately. "Did you authorize this?" she asked, trying to keep the frustration out of her voice. "Absolutely not," George said, sounding angry himself. "Patricia's been elected to the Architectural Review Committee, and apparently she thinks that gives her the authority to send out letters." "I'll handle this, Lisa, just ignore it." But ignoring Patricia was becoming impossible. She started showing up at Lisa's house at random times. Once, Lisa came home to find Patricia measuring the distance between the stickers and the edge of the doorframe, claiming she was documenting placement for the committee. Another time, Patricia knocked on the door at 8 in the evening to ask if Lisa had reconsidered removing the stickers. The worst part was how Patricia talked about it around the neighborhood. She never said anything directly mean about Lisa, but she'd stand in her driveway chatting with other neighbors, and Lisa could hear snippets of conversation. "Such a shame about those orange things. Really brings down the whole street." I'm sure she has her reasons, but still. Mrs. Johnson, who'd lived in the neighborhood for 15 years, came over one afternoon with a bottle of wine and some straight talk. "Don't let Patricia get to you," she said as they sat on Lisa's back porch. She did the same thing to the Hendersons before they moved. Drove them crazy about their fence height until they just gave up and left. That's what she wants, you know. She wants you to feel so uncomfortable that you move. "But why?" Lisa asked. "What did I ever do to her?" Mrs. Johnson shrugged. "Some people just need something to control." She was a real estate agent for 30 years. Very successful from what I hear. Then she retired, and I think she doesn't know what to do with herself. So she's decided to make this neighborhood her project. The situation escalated when Patricia started a petition. She went door to door with a clipboard, asking neighbors to sign a request for the HOA board to enforce existing standards regarding exterior appearance. She described the stickers as safety hazards that could distract drivers. She claimed they were reducing everyone's property values by thousands of dollars, though she had no actual evidence of that. Most neighbors refused to sign. Some did it politely, making excuses about needing to think about it. Others were more direct. Danny's mom told Patricia flat out that she was harassing Lisa and needed to stop. But a few people did sign, either because they actually agreed with Patricia or because they just wanted her to leave their porch. Lisa found out about the petition from her next-door neighbor, Raymond Lee. He was in his 70s, a retired engineer who'd lived in Meadowbrook Gardens since it was built. He'd watched the whole drama unfold with growing disapproval. "She came to my door yesterday," Raymond told Lisa over the fence one Saturday morning. "Wanted me to sign some paper about your stickers. I told her those stickers are there for your daughter's safety, and that she should be ashamed of herself for making a fuss about it." You know what she said? She said I didn't understand the importance of community standards. He shook his head. "I've been in this neighborhood for 23 years. I've seen people come and go, and I've never seen anyone act like this woman." But Patricia wasn't done. When the petition didn't get the results she wanted, she took things to another level. She filed a complaint with the County Code Enforcement Office, claiming that Lisa was operating an unlicensed daycare center and that the stickers were related to that business. Lisa got a notice from the county on a Tuesday afternoon. An inspector wanted to visit her property to investigate an anonymous complaint. Her hands were shaking as she called her lawyer. "This is harassment," Lisa said. "She's making false reports about me now." Her lawyer agreed but explained that Lisa still had to cooperate with the inspection. "Let them come, let them see there's nothing going on, and then we'll document this as part of the pattern of harassment. We might need that documentation later." The inspector showed up 2 days later. He was a tired-looking man in his 40s who clearly had better things to do. He walked through Lisa's house, asked a few questions, and was done in less than 10 minutes. "Ma'am, there's obviously no daycare here," he said as he filled out his report. "I'm going to mark this complaint as unfounded. Between you and me, we get a lot of these neighbor dispute calls. People use us to harass each other, and it's a waste of everyone's time." Lisa thanked him and closed the door, but her hands were still shaking. This was getting out of control. She wasn't just annoyed anymore. She was genuinely stressed. She'd started having trouble sleeping, worrying about what Patricia would do next. Work was suffering too. Lisa found herself distracted during meetings, checking her phone to see if anything else had happened at home. Her boss noticed and pulled her aside one afternoon. "Everything okay?" he asked. "You seem pretty stressed lately." Lisa gave him the short version of what was happening. He listened, shook his head, and told her to take a personal day if she needed it. "Neighborhood drama is the worst," he said. "You can't even get away from it because you live there." The stress was affecting Mia too. She was 10 years old enough to pick up on the tension. One night at dinner, she asked, "Mom, why is that lady from across the street always watching our house?" Lisa's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "When I get off the school bus, sometimes she's just standing in her yard staring at our house. It's weird." Lisa looked out the front window. Sure enough, there was Patricia, standing in her driveway, arms crossed, looking directly at Lisa's house. When she saw Lisa looking back, she didn't look away. She just stood there staring. That night, Lisa started keeping a log. She wrote down every time Patricia came to her door, every complaint, every incident. Her lawyer had suggested it, saying that if this continued, they might need to pursue a restraining order or file harassment charges. Things came to a head at the next HOA meeting. Patricia showed up with a stack of printed emails from concerned residents about the stickers. She read them aloud one by one. Most of them said essentially the same thing, that the stickers were ugly and didn't belong in the neighborhood. George finally lost his patience. "Patricia, this matter has been resolved. The stickers are court-ordered and they're staying. This is the last time we're discussing this topic. If you bring it up again, I'll have to ask you to leave the meeting." Patricia's face went red. "This is a democracy," she said. "The homeowners have a right to voice their concerns, and the board has a responsibility to follow the law." George shot back. "Which is what we're doing. Now can we please move on to the actual business of this meeting?" Lisa thought that might finally be the end of it. George had put his foot down. Patricia had been publicly shut down. Surely she'd give up now, but Lisa didn't know Patricia very well yet. She didn't understand that Patricia saw this as a challenge now, something she had to win. And Patricia was already planning her next move, one that would cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. As Lisa drove home from that meeting, she felt exhausted. She'd never asked for any of this. She was just trying to protect her daughter and follow a court order. How had that turned into a neighborhood war? She pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at those orange stickers on her front door. They'd been such a source of comfort at first, a visible reminder that the court took Mia's safety seriously. Now they felt like a target on her house, but taking them down wasn't an option, not legally and not in terms of Mia's safety. So Lisa got out of the car, walked up to her front door and went inside, trying to push thoughts of Patricia out of her mind. She had no idea what was coming. It happened on a Wednesday morning, one of those regular workdays where Lisa dropped Mia off at school and headed to the office, expecting nothing more dramatic than paperwork and client calls. She had no idea that while she was sitting at her desk reviewing contracts, everything was about to blow up. Raymond Lee was in his front yard watering his roses when he saw Patricia come out of her house. He didn't think much of it at first. Patricia was always outside, always watching, always finding something to criticize. But then he noticed she was carrying something, a spray bottle and what looked like a scraper tool, the kind you'd use to remove old stickers from a car window. He watched as Patricia walked straight across the street toward Lisa's house. Not to the sidewalk, not to the driveway, but right up to the front door. "Excuse me?" Raymond called out. "What are you doing?" Patricia didn't even turn around. "I'm fixing a problem that should have been handled months ago." Raymond put down his hose and walked closer. "That's not your property. You can't just go onto someone else's property." "This is community business," Patricia said, kneeling down and spraying one of the orange stickers with whatever was in that bottle. "I've given her plenty of chances to handle this the right way. Now I'm handling it myself." Raymond's heart started pounding. He'd lived a long time, seen a lot of things, but he'd never seen anything quite this brazen. "Patricia, stop. Those stickers are court-ordered. You're going to get yourself in serious trouble." But Patricia was already scraping at the first sticker, working the edge of the scraper under it. "Courts don't have authority over HOA covenants," she said, her voice tight with determination. "Someone needs to stand up for property values in this neighborhood." Raymond pulled out his phone and called Lisa's cell. It rang 4 times before she answered. "Hello? Lisa, it's Raymond. You need to come home right now. Patricia's on your front porch removing those stickers." There was a long pause. "What?" "She's got some kind of chemical spray and a scraper. She's taking them off your door and windows. I tried to stop her, but she won't listen to me." Lisa felt like someone had dumped ice water over her head. "Call the police. I'm leaving right now." She grabbed her purse, told her assistant she had an emergency, and practically ran to her car. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely get the key in the ignition. The drive home normally took 20 minutes. She made it in 14, probably breaking several traffic laws along the way. Meanwhile, Raymond had called 911. The dispatcher took his information and said officers were on the way, but Patricia wasn't stopping. If anything, she seemed to be working faster, as if she knew she was on a clock now. The first sticker came off in pieces, leaving behind sticky residue. Patricia sprayed more of her solution on it, working at the adhesive with the scraper. The chemical was strong. Raymond could smell it from where he stood, and it was leaving marks on Lisa's painted door. "You're damaging her property," Raymond said, his voice rising. "This is vandalism." "This is community service," Patricia shot back. She moved to the garage door, starting on the large sticker there. "Someone has to protect the standards we all agreed to when we moved here." By the time Lisa's car screeched into the driveway, Patricia had removed 3 of the 4 stickers and was working on the last one, the one on the ground floor window. She'd been at it for almost 30 minutes and her back was probably aching, but she had the focused intensity of someone on a mission. Lisa jumped out of her car. "What are you doing?" Patricia looked up and for a moment, something flickered across her face. Maybe it was guilt or maybe just surprise at being caught, but it passed quickly, replaced by that same stubborn determination. "I'm doing what the HOA should have done months ago," Patricia said. "These violate our community covenants and I'm removing them." "Those are court-ordered," Lisa said, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. "I showed you the paperwork. You can't just destroy them." "Any reasonable court would make an exception for HOA rules," Patricia said, turning back to her work. "And if they won't, then the court order is unreasonable." That's when the police arrived. 2 officers, a younger woman and an older man, pulling up in their patrol car with lights flashing. Patricia finally stopped what she was doing, standing up and brushing off her knees. The older officer approached first. "We got a call about a property dispute?" Everyone started talking at once. Raymond explaining what he'd witnessed. Lisa trying to explain about the court order and the stickers. Patricia insisting she had every right to enforce community standards. The officer held up his hand. "One at a time, please." "Let's start with you, ma'am," he said to Lisa. "This is your property?" Lisa nodded and took a breath, forcing herself to speak calmly. She explained the whole situation. The custody arrangement with her ex-husband. The judge's safety order. The court-mandated stickers that had to stay visible on her home. She pulled out her phone and showed them pictures of the court documents, which she'd started keeping digital copies of after all the harassment started. Then Patricia had her turn. She talked about HOA covenants and community standards and property values. She insisted she was helping the neighborhood, protecting everyone's investments. She claimed she'd tried to resolve this through proper channels, but the HOA board had refused to act. The younger officer walked around Lisa's property, looking at the damage. The front door had scrape marks where Patricia's tool had gouged the paint. The weather stripping around the door was torn in one spot. Sticky residue covered the areas where the stickers had been. And in a trash bag sitting on Lisa's lawn were the remains of the stickers themselves, torn and scraped into pieces. "Ma'am," the older officer said to Patricia, "did you have permission to be on this property?" "I don't need permission to enforce community rules," Patricia said. "Actually, you do. This is private property. You've trespassed and you've damaged property that belongs to someone else." Patricia's confidence started to crack. "But the HOA? The HOA doesn't give you authority to go onto someone else's property and remove things, especially things that are legally required to be there." He looked at Lisa. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges?" Lisa looked at Patricia, who suddenly looked smaller and older than she had moments before. For just a second, Lisa felt almost sorry for her. But then she thought about the months of harassment. The stress, the false reports to the county, the way Mia had started having nightmares about the angry lady across the street. "Yes," Lisa said quietly. "I want to press charges." The officers spent the next hour documenting everything. They took photographs of the damage from multiple angles. They photographed the trash bag with the destroyed stickers. They had Raymond give a formal statement about what he'd witnessed. They looked at the court order on Lisa's phone and took down the case number. Patricia stood in Lisa's front yard, her spray bottle and scraper in an evidence bag, watching her neighborhood stunt turn into a legal nightmare. The officers issued her citations for trespassing and criminal mischief. "You'll receive a court date in the mail," the younger officer told her. "I strongly suggest you get a lawyer." After Patricia had left, walking slowly back to her house across the street, Lisa stood on her front porch looking at the damage. The stickers were gone. The ones that were supposed to keep Mia safe. The ones that a judge had ordered. The ones that Lisa was legally required to maintain. "What do I do now?" she asked the officer quietly. "Document everything," he said. "Take your own pictures. Get repair estimates for the damage. And you're probably going to need to contact whoever ordered those stickers originally to explain what happened." Lisa nodded numbly. The officers left and she was alone with Raymond, who'd stayed to make sure she was okay. "I've never seen anything like that," Raymond said, shaking his head. "In all my years, I've never seen someone just brazenly destroy someone else's property like that." Lisa looked across the street at Patricia's house. The curtains were drawn, but she could see a shadow moving behind them. Patricia was watching, and Lisa realized that this was far from over. The first thing Lisa did after the police left was call her lawyer. Her hands were still shaking as she dialed the number, standing in her front yard staring at the damage to her door. "Margaret, it's Lisa Chen." Something happened. Something bad. Margaret Torres had been Lisa's lawyer through the entire divorce and custody battle. She'd seen Lisa at her lowest points, and she knew exactly how important those stickers were. When Lisa explained what Patricia had done, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "She actually removed court-ordered safety markers?" Margaret finally said, her voice tight with anger. "After you showed her the court documentation?" "She said courts don't have authority over HOA rules," Lisa said, feeling tears starting to form. "Margaret, what do I do? I'm supposed to have those stickers up. It's in the custody order. If Robert's lawyer finds out about this..." "Okay, breathe," Margaret said. "First, this isn't your fault, and I'll make sure the court knows that. Second, we need to file an emergency motion explaining what happened. Can you get those stickers replaced today?" That became Lisa's new nightmare. She spent the rest of the afternoon making phone calls, trying to find someone who could install the exact same type of safety markers that the court had specified. The original installation had been done by a company recommended by the court, but they couldn't come out for 3 days. 3 days. Robert's next supervised visit was in 5 days. Lisa finally found a contractor who specialized in safety equipment who agreed to come out the next morning as an emergency call. But he charged double the normal rate, $300, money Lisa didn't really have in her budget, but what choice did she have? Then came the call she'd been dreading. Robert's lawyer, a sharp woman named Judith Klein, who'd always seemed to enjoy making Lisa's life difficult. "Lisa, I'm looking at the county inspection records," Judith said without any greeting. "There was a code enforcement visit to your property last week. Care to explain why?" Lisa's stomach dropped. Of course, Patricia's false report would show up in public records. That was a fake complaint filed by a neighbor who's been harassing me about the safety stickers. The inspector cleared me completely. "And now I'm hearing the stickers have been removed?" Judith's voice was sharp. "Robert is very concerned about compliance with the custody order. They were removed by that same neighbor without my permission while I was at work," Lisa said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I filed a police report. She's been charged with trespassing and criminal mischief. I'm having the stickers replaced tomorrow morning. The order states those markers must be maintained at all times," Judith said. "We're filing a motion with the court. Robert believes this shows a pattern of non-compliance," Lisa wanted to scream. "I was at work. A neighbor came onto my property and destroyed court-ordered safety equipment. How is that my fault?" But Judith had already hung up. Lisa sat down on her couch and finally let herself cry. This was so unfair. She'd done everything right, followed every rule, and somehow she was being punished for someone else's crazy behavior. The next morning, the contractor arrived at 7. He was a middle-aged guy named Phil who took one look at Lisa's door and shook his head. "Whoever did this really went at it," he said, examining the scrape marks. "Damaged your paint, tore the weather stripping. You're going to need repairs beyond just the stickers." "How much?" Lisa asked, though she was almost afraid to hear the answer. "For the stickers, $300 like we discussed. For the door repairs, paint touch-up, new weather stripping, probably another $800 or $900. I can give you an exact estimate." Lisa did the math in her head. Over $1,000 in damages, plus her lawyer's fees for the emergency court motion, plus taking time off work to deal with all of this. Patricia's moment of self-righteous vandalism was going to cost Lisa a small fortune. Phil installed the new stickers and took detailed photographs of his work, including timestamps for Lisa's court filing. He also took pictures of all the damage Patricia had caused, providing a written estimate for repairs. At least Lisa would have documentation for the criminal case. The emergency court hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Lisa had to take another half-day off work, something her boss was understanding about, but that still put her behind on a major case at the firm. She sat in the family courtroom, watching Judge Morrison review the police report and the photos. Robert was there too, sitting on the other side of the courtroom with Judith. He wouldn't look at Lisa, just stared straight ahead with his arms crossed. They'd once loved each other, built a life together, had a beautiful daughter. Now they couldn't even make eye contact. "Ms. Chen," Judge Morrison said, "I've reviewed everything here. The police report clearly shows this wasn't your doing. But I need to be clear. You are responsible for ensuring these markers remain in place. If this happens again, regardless of whose fault it is, we'll need to revisit the custody arrangement." "Your Honor, it won't happen again," Lisa said. "The person who did this has been criminally charged. I've documented everything. I've taken every possible step." "I understand," the judge said, but his tone was firm. "But my primary concern is the child's safety, and these markers are part of ensuring that safety. Make sure they stay up." Lisa left the courthouse feeling defeated, even though the judge had technically sided with her. Robert's lawyer had planted doubt, made it seem like maybe Lisa wasn't taking the custody order seriously enough. It was all so twisted. The neighborhood situation got worse. Patricia's criminal court date was set for 6 weeks out, but word of what happened had spread through Meadowbrook Gardens like wildfire. The community Facebook group exploded with arguments. Some people defended Patricia. Not her actions exactly, but her intentions. "She was just trying to maintain neighborhood standards," one person wrote. "Maybe she went too far, but someone needs to care about property values." Others were appalled. She committed a crime, someone else responded. She destroyed court-ordered safety equipment. What's wrong with you people? The neighborhood divided into camps. There were Team Lisa people who brought her casseroles and offered to help with anything she needed. There were Team Patricia people who gave Lisa cold looks at the grocery store. And there were the neutral folks who just wanted the drama to be over. Lisa tried to ignore all of it and focus on Mia, but that was getting harder. Mia had started asking questions. Why did that lady hate them? Why were people arguing about their house? Why did the stickers matter so much? How do you explain adult pettiness to a 10-year-old? How do you explain that sometimes people care more about appearance than safety? Lisa did her best, but she could see the confusion and hurt in her daughter's eyes. Raymond kept watch over Lisa's house like a guardian angel. He'd positioned a chair in his front window, where he could see both Lisa's house and Patricia's. He'd told Lisa he was keeping his own log of Patricia's movements, just in case it was needed for court. The HOA board held an emergency meeting. George Palmer was fed up. He'd been trying to run a simple neighborhood association, dealing with normal things like pool maintenance and landscaping contracts. Instead, he was stuck mediating a war between two homeowners. The board voted to fine Patricia $500 for violating the community's harassment policy. They also sent out a letter to all residents making it crystal clear that individual homeowners had no authority to enforce HOA rules, and anyone caught doing so would face additional fines. Patricia didn't show up to that meeting, but her lawyer did. A stern man who argued that Patricia had been exercising her rights as a homeowner to protect property values. The board wasn't swayed. The fine stood. Lisa's lawyer bills kept growing. Margaret had to file responses to Robert's motions, attend the court hearings, and prepare for Patricia's criminal trial, where Lisa would need to testify. Every phone call, every email, every court appearance added to the total. One night, Lisa sat at her kitchen table with all the bills spread out in front of her. Legal fees, repair costs, the replacement stickers, time off work. It was all adding up to thousands of dollars. Money she didn't have. Money that should have gone to Mia's college fund or family vacations or just basic security. And for what? Because a neighbor decided some orange stickers were ugly? The unfairness of it all hit Lisa like a wave. She put her head down on the table and cried. Really cried for the first time since this whole mess started. She'd tried so hard to be strong, to handle everything properly, to not let Patricia get to her, but she was exhausted. Mia found her like that, came downstairs for a glass of water and saw her mom crying at the kitchen table. Mom! Mia's voice was small and scared. Lisa wiped her eyes and tried to smile. I'm okay, sweetie. Just a tough day. Mia climbed into her lap, too big for it really, but Lisa held her anyway. I wish that lady would just leave us alone, Mia whispered. Me too, baby, Lisa said. Me too. The day of Patricia's criminal trial arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in October. Lisa had taken the whole day off work, knowing this would be an all-day affair. She wore her best professional outfit, the navy blue suit she usually saved for important client meetings, and tried to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach. Margaret met her outside the courthouse. Remember, just answer the questions honestly. Don't let Patricia's lawyer rattle you. You didn't do anything wrong. The courtroom was smaller than the family court where Lisa had dealt with her custody issues. Patricia was already there, sitting at the defendant's table with her lawyer, a man named Richard Sawyer who had a reputation for being aggressive. Patricia had dressed carefully too, looking respectable in a beige pantsuit, her hair neatly styled. She looked like someone's sweet grandmother, not someone who'd committed vandalism. The prosecutor was a young woman named Amy Chen, no relation to Lisa despite the shared last name. She'd reviewed the case thoroughly and seemed confident. The trial started with opening statements. Amy laid out the facts clearly. Patricia had trespassed on private property. She'd knowingly destroyed court-ordered safety equipment after being explicitly told what the stickers were for. She'd caused over $1,000 in property damage. The evidence was overwhelming. Patricia's lawyer argued that his client had acted out of genuine concern for the community, that she'd believed she had authority through the HOA to remove what she saw as violations. He painted Patricia as a concerned citizen who'd made a mistake, not a criminal. Then came the witnesses. Raymond was first. He testified about what he'd seen that morning, how he'd tried to stop Patricia, how she'd refused to listen even when told the stickers were court-ordered. She knew exactly what she was doing, Raymond said firmly. She wasn't confused. She wasn't mistaken. She decided those stickers shouldn't be there, and she took them down regardless of the law. Patricia's lawyer tried to shake his testimony during cross-examination. "Isn't it true you're friends with Ms. Chen?" "I'm her neighbor," Raymond said. "We're friendly, but I'm here because I witnessed a crime, not because of friendship." "And isn't it true you have a grudge against my client for criticizing your rose garden?" Raymond actually laughed. "Young man, I've been growing roses for 40 years. I don't need anyone's approval, and I certainly don't hold grudges over gardening opinions. I'm here because I watched your client vandalize someone's property." The police officers who'd responded to the scene testified next. They described finding Patricia on Lisa's property with the damaged stickers in a trash bag, how she'd admitted to removing them, how she'd insisted she had the right to do it. Then it was Lisa's turn. She walked to the witness stand feeling like everyone in the courtroom was staring at her. Amy asked her to explain the custody situation, why the stickers were necessary, how she'd tried to explain this to Patricia. "I showed her the court order," Lisa said. "It was about 2 weeks after she moved in. I explained everything as clearly as I could. She seemed to understand, but then she just kept pushing." "Did you ever give her permission to remove the stickers?" Amy asked. "Absolutely not. They're required by law. I couldn't remove them even if I wanted to." Patricia's lawyer, Richard, stood up for cross-examination. "Ms. Chen, isn't it true that these stickers are unsightly?" Margaret had warned Lisa this question might come. "They're bright and noticeable, which is exactly what they're supposed to be. They're safety equipment. But they do stand out against your home's exterior, don't they? They stand out so emergency services can find my house quickly if there's ever a problem during my ex-husband's supervised visits." "That's the point," Richard changed tactics. "You've had ongoing conflict with my client for months. Isn't this prosecution really just about that personal conflict?" Lisa felt her anger rising but kept her voice calm. "Your client harassed me for months. She filed false reports with the county. She started a petition against me. She wouldn't let it go even after the HOA ruled in my favor. Then she came onto my property without permission and destroyed legally required safety equipment. This isn't personal. This is about someone who broke the law." The testimony that seemed to hit hardest was from Phil, the contractor who'd replaced the stickers. He brought photographs showing the damage Patricia had caused, and he walked the judge through exactly what it had cost to repair. "The weather stripping was torn," he explained. "The paint was scraped down to bare wood in several places. The adhesive remover she used had actually started eating into the finish on the door. This wasn't careful removal. This was aggressive, angry destruction." When it was Patricia's turn to testify, Richard had her tell her side of the story. She talked about wanting to maintain neighborhood standards, about trying to work through proper channels, about believing she was helping the community. "I never intended to cause any real harm," Patricia said, her voice quavering slightly. "I thought if I just removed them we could find a compromise, maybe put up something less noticeable." But Amy's cross-examination was devastating. She had Patricia walk through the timeline. The HOA meeting where George had ruled against her. Lisa showing her the court documentation. The multiple times Patricia had been told she had no authority to enforce rules. "You knew the stickers were court-ordered, didn't you?" Amy asked. Patricia hesitated. "I thought the court could be petitioned to change. That's not what I asked." "You knew they were court-ordered, yes or no?" "Yes, but... and you removed them anyway?" Patricia's face flushed. "I was trying to help the neighborhood." "By committing a crime?" Amy's voice was sharp. "By trespassing and destroying safety equipment that was protecting a child?" Patricia had no good answer to that. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Helen Torres, took less than an hour to reach her verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, her expression was serious. "I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony," Judge Torres said. "Miss Brennan, you had ample warning that these stickers were legally required. You were told repeatedly by both the homeowner and your HOA that you had no authority to remove them, yet you chose to take matters into your own hands, trespassing on private property and destroying court-ordered safety equipment." Patricia sat very still, her hands clenched in her lap. "This court finds you guilty on both counts, trespassing and criminal mischief. You are ordered to pay full restitution to Ms. Chen for the sticker replacement, property damage repairs, legal fees, and court costs. The total comes to $3,625. Lisa felt relief wash over her. It wasn't just about the money, though, that would help. It was about someone finally holding Patricia accountable, but the judge wasn't done. Additionally, you are sentenced to 40 hours of community service and 1 year of probation. I want to be very clear, Ms. Brennan. You cannot take the law into your own hands. Your neighborhood concerns, valid or not, do not give you the right to damage other people's property or ignore court orders. If you violate the terms of your probation, you'll be back in this courtroom facing jail time. Patricia's face had gone pale. This was clearly more serious than she'd expected. Outside the courthouse, Lisa stood with Margaret in the autumn sunshine, feeling like she could finally breathe again. "It's over," Margaret said. "You won. But it wasn't quite over. The HOA still had to deal with Patricia." At the next board meeting, they voted to add the $500 fine they'd already issued, plus an additional penalty for bringing negative attention to the community. George made it clear that any future harassment of any homeowner would result in further fines. Patricia stopped attending HOA meetings after that. She stopped her daily vigils watching Lisa's house. She stopped trying to organize neighbors against the stickers. She basically stopped interacting with anyone in Meadowbrook Gardens at all. The neighborhood Facebook drama eventually died down. Most people moved on to other topics, other concerns. A few Team Patricia holdouts muttered about overcriminalizing neighborhood disputes, but even they eventually let it go. Lisa noticed Patricia's house went up for sale about 6 months after the trial. She watched the for sale sign go up from her front window, those bright orange stickers clearly visible on either side of her. Raymond came over that evening with a bottle of wine. "Guess who's leaving?" he said with a slight smile. "I saw," Lisa said. "Part of me feels bad. She lost a criminal case, paid thousands in fines and restitution, and now she's leaving." "Don't feel too bad," Raymond said. "She did all of this to herself. You gave her every opportunity to back down, to be reasonable. She chose not to. The house sold within a month to a young couple with a baby. They introduced themselves to Lisa on moving day, complimented her garden, and didn't say a word about the orange stickers on her door." Life slowly returned to normal. Mia's nightmares about the angry lady faded. Lisa stopped jumping every time she heard a knock on the door. The stress lines that had been permanently etched on her forehead started to smooth out. The stickers stayed up, doing their job, keeping Mia safe. And eventually, they just became part of the house, no more remarkable than the mailbox or the porch light. Most new neighbors didn't even ask about them. One afternoon, about a year after everything happened, Lisa was gardening in her front yard when a woman walking her dog stopped to chat.